Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. Yesterday, we had an inspiring and I would say marvelous dialogue with Rob Hopkins, who lives in Totnes, England, who's the founder of the transition movement. And he was so inspiring about all the things that can still be done in the face of our climate emergency. That today, just when I was getting up here in California, I got a call from Dilini Gunasekera in Sri Lanka, who is our country director there. And she said that she was so inspired by what Rob said about radical imagination in the face of any challenge, that she had this idea of planting 100,000 trees across Sri Lanka with school kids and with the Lions Club, of which she's a member. She's a teacher. She's in touch with a lot of schools. So she called the Ministry of Education. She called the Ministry of Health. She called the First Lady of Sri Lanka, who is a friend of hers. And within a day, she got agreement in principle with all the parties that she called, that it was a wonderful idea to organize school children to plant 100,000 trees next year in Sri Lanka. And I was so thrilled and inspired by Dilini's response to Rob Hopkins yesterday that I thought I would just bring that in. He was saying that one of the climate activists in Glasgow during COP26 a few weeks ago was asked, what are the probabilities now? And he says, we're down to 5%. And Rob said, we've got to all be in with the 5%. And if we can engage in radical imagination and think what now needs to be done, we can solve this thing. And Dilini Gunasekera is now going to plant 100,000 trees, which isn't the whole answer, but it's something that she can do. It's something that the kids can do. And I've been directed to be in touch with Tree Sisters and, the Tree Whisperer, Jim Conley, and all the tree organizations that we can locate to come in and support what Dilini and now the First Lady and several ministries of the government of Sri Lanka and various school systems around the nation are going to now mobilize. And it's going to be launched on January 13th. So on January 14th, our Humanity Rising session is going to be on what they have mobilized there in Sri Lanka. So I just wanted to start our program today on an optimistic note. There's a lot of challenges out there. We know because we cover them most of the time here on Humanity Rising. But as you all know, we're humanityrising.solutions. So we're always looking for those trim tabs, those dream lines where ordinary people are doing extraordinary things because they care enough to unleash their imagination in the spirit of radical collaboration and make a small difference in their own way, connected as we are trying to do through the Global Regeneration Corps, which dozens of organizations have launched through Humanity Rising. So the Global Regeneration Corps is going to be supporting what Dilini's doing there in Sri Lanka. And any of you who know organizations that are involved with trees, let us know, and we'll connect them to Dilini and see what we can do together as we bring 2021 to a close and we embark on a very consequential year. Sir David King, one of the most eminent climate scientists in the world, says we have about 3 to 4 years. So let's fill those times, those months now, as energetically as we possibly can. So thank you, everyone. And now, as we always do on Humanity Rising, let's just take a moment in the tumult and hustle and bustle of our lives, all the busyness that besets our time, and just pause. And connect with your body. Today, we're going to talk about our bodies. And we're going to talk about our kidneys in particular, but just center yourself in your body for just a minute. And feel your heart. Listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving that you're alive. We're all alive at this most extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. It's such a invigorating thing to pause and know that tens of thousands of people all over the world are pausing, quieting their selves and communing with their hearts. It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I just want to appreciate all of you in this moment. And I want to introduce now one of the most, I think, extraordinary women I know that I've met recently through Humanity Rising. A woman who, since the age of 4, has been dealing with challenges to her kidneys. Has had 2 kidney transplants, has been on dialysis. And instead of giving up, Kiara Jean Roberts is an example of the 5% that Rob Hopkins was talking about yesterday. You know, in the face of challenges, we have all kinds of options. And there's an old saying that circumstances don't make us as much as they reveal us. And as I've gotten to know Kiara, I've gotten to know a woman who has used the challenges that life has brought to her in a way that it's empowered her. And she now teaches yoga for kidney challenged people. She's a naturopathic nutritionist. She has dedicated her life to an organic way of viewing the body and healing. And as we got familiar with each other and got acquainted, I thought it would be a wonderful idea, a very inspiring session to invite Chiara and some of her colleagues to just talk to us about the kidney. It's one of the most important organs in the body. And we're going to learn a lot about it today. So Chiara, thank you so much for putting this panel together. And I'll turn the program now over to you, and you and your Lena and Charlene wax eloquent for the next hour or so. And then I'll circle back and we'll bring in some of the comments and questions from the chat. But thank you and welcome.
Jim, thank you so much. I was just reflecting on how refreshing it is to start any kind of panel or any kind of endeavor, whether it's academic or deeply spiritual, with just taking a moment, that sacred pause that we all need. We need it each and every day, not just in kind of ad hoc moments. And I just reflect with great appreciation on our conversation back in June, that you so nobly held my story, and you were so compassionate. But you kind of permitted me, it's like, well, why don't you go away and think about what you'd like to offer? And I really appreciated that space, because, you know, you said you could bring others in, you could have a panel. And I went away and scratched my head a bit and thought, yeah, I can't do this. I can't just do this on my own. I'll go nuts. And I'm so lucky that golden nuggets and golden hearts come across my path. Lena, more recently, Charlene for longer, and poor Charlene has had me ranting in various moments around my frustrations. But I really honor the courage of both these women to join me in this conversation. It is so huge. And I don't start crying, but I might cry, because this to me represents such a shift in my own journey. What is it to get out of our own way and not be so terrified of being judged by others, which is no easy task when you're a patient in a system that's highly medicalized, that has kind of run some of its staff into the ground to the point of, we know physician burnout, medic burnout is a real thing, and it's not just isolated to medics by any means, but it comes at such a price. And to bring in people who are working in the system, I have, I suppose, the gift of running my own business, wholly aligned in the integrative health space for almost 10 years. I have a background in banking, so I get that it's not whimsical to follow our dreams. It's not whimsical to be who we truly are. And what does it really mean to live from our hearts? And even the relationship between kidney health and heart health, it's huge. So we might not get into the kind of the ins and outs of kidney function because we're kind of talking about, I'd like to open up the conversation to be whatever it needs to be, really, and to hold safe space for Lena and Charlene and for myself. And I really want to give a shout out to Hannah Maple as well, who so diligently and so kindly wanted to be here, but she's a newly appointed consultant and transplant surgeon. And her schedule just this week has not allowed for it, but I wanted to kind of bring her spirit into the mix because she's another incredible woman. So what I'd love to do is read a poem first, because I think it really helps to set the scene in a gentle way, and then let Lena and Charlene introduce themselves as they wish to be introduced, so that it kind of goes beyond labels, in their way, in whatever wants to come out on this day. So it's something I've chosen by poet and philosopher John O'Donoghue, because he's an Irishman. He passed away back in 2007 quite unexpectedly. He was only in his 50s, but had written a huge, extraordinary body of work up to that date. And I have an Irish woman as a mother. My name, Chiara, that's my Irishness right there. And I thought that would feel very resonant, because I know that we'll have a very diverse audience watching. So let yourself receive it. I place on the altar of dawn the quiet loyalty of breath, the tent of thought where I shelter. Waves of desire I am sure to, and all beauty drawn to the eye. May my mind come alive today to the invisible geography that invites me to new frontiers, to break the dead shell of yesterday's, to risk being disturbed and changed. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more. And with that, I hand it over for well, Charlene, let's start with you, if that's okay, just to say whatever you want to say about who you are on this day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kira. So my name's Charlene Greenwood, and I'm a physiotherapist that works with kidney patients. And I've known Kira for quite a number of years now, and really share a mission really to try and look at kidney patients or people who live with kidney disease, because we don't like to call them kidney patients, people who live with kidney disease, and how we can be more holistic in their approach to well-being. So moving away from it being such a medical model and having a much more holistic well-being model. So thank you, Kira. It's a real pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Lena, what wants to pulse through you?
My name's Lena Johansson. I'm a dietitian, and I work solely with people with a kidney condition. And I met Kira a few weeks ago only, and I reached out to Kira because I saw a little talk that she bravely gave to a conference that was watched online by lots and lots of doctors and nurses predominantly. And I reached out to her because I thought it was incredibly brave, but a lot of what she was saying was resonating with probably the personal journey, but also the journey in terms of what I work with at the moment. So I'm a product of as Charlene put it, the medical model. I was trained in that system of looking at the body and dealing with people in the medical model. And by that, we mean we treat the disease. We don't really encompass potentially the value of what the person brings to that treatment. And I guess at the moment I'm on that journey of understanding about a different way of treating and healing people. And that's why I've joined today.
Thanks, Lena. And I think it's lovely. I know Hannah would have been the surgical influence, but she's also, I know she has very, very lots of commonalities with what you've both shared. But I think it's lovely, given what I do, that we've got somebody with a physiotherapy background, which is all about movement. And it's not just about movement, it's so much more. It's so much more than that. You know, what are we really doing when we move well and in ways that are resonant for our unique situation? But also to have Lena as a dietitian, because me as a nutritional therapist, it's the food and the movement that are coming through in this shared space. And I think that that's when it comes to kidney health, to perhaps maybe just, if I break down how I named this session, integrating a holistic approach to kidney health, and it doesn't mean that that's the perfect name at all. I might still be playing around with that. But it is kind of resonating with the second book that I'm writing. And so this is such rich fodder for that, because I truly believe that we're braving a conversation that is really, really important about cracking a new nut open, to release new possibilities. And really that asks us to tap into our own imaginal realm, which is why we need, you know, what a gift to be able to start with taking a breath, taking a moment. What a gift to be able to open up with a profound piece of writing that somebody else has pulled from the gossamer strands of their own being, that we're all learning together. And I think I can have, you know, to be vulnerable about this, I can get very angry and very frustrated, and then get very caught up in that, and then I'm not useful. And so it's taken, it's taken quite a long process for me to integrate. So when it comes to integration, yoga ultimately means integration. That, we all have things that happen to us in our life experiences that can kind of bring us to our knees, you know, in many, many different ways. It might be a health issue. It might be we lost somebody very dear to us at a young age, and that these things spin, they spin an effect. They have a consequence. And so where I've started to dive in a little bit more into the neuroscience of movement, that we're all coming together as 100 billion neurons in our own brain, which is just mind-blowing. What does it even mean to be human? It's so vast. And that, for me, is where integrating a holistic approach to kidney health, and it could be to respiratory health, to cardiovascular health, to skin health. It applies to everything. So yes, we're honing in on kidneys because that's what we love to talk about or to feel into. But that wholeness, and I want to differentiate here for a little moment because it feels important that if you look up, and there's many definitions of holistic, but if you look up holistic, you might get a medical definition that is actually written like that, and then a philosophical definition that holistic is used in the medical model, but I don't think it's fully understood in the way it's used. And I know the people here understand that, but to integrate our wounds takes a lot of work. It's always an ongoing evolution. It's never a complete journey. We're never trying to get anywhere. It's about the process. So how we can come together and spin and weave new ways of being. And that feels so important in renal medicine because that's somewhere that I can speak to a lot and can affect change. So let me throw this out to the two of you. What feels to be some of the frustrations that you're experiencing in applying this? Because I know, and I'm somebody who has a complete independent voice. I'm not within, both of you work within the NHS, and I know we're kind of in the San Francisco vibe as well. So there'll be a lot of people with that don't have the public health model. But what are some of the frustrations that you are feeling at the moment around percolating these ideas, because the sort of the biomedical model is so entrenched? What are some of the frustrations? And I know that that's a very open question, so go with what feels resonant and what feels honest to you at the moment.
Do you want me to go first, Lena?
I can kick it off. I think one aspect of it is definitely the time pressures of the service. You have a very limited allocation of time to see a lot of people, and within that time, I guess what the medical model does is that it trains us to look at the illness and to treat that, because that's the priority. That's where you're at, and that's what you have to do. But when you don't look at the whole person, you miss so much important information that then can guide your treatment to be much more effective. And I think because the time slots are so small that you get to spend with people, I think it's difficult to work within that system to change the way you want to approach care. So I think that's one of the frustrations I think that I can relay at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense. Charlene?
Yeah, I think that one of my frustrations, particularly now, but has been for some time really, is the medical model we've become so ingrained in it, and we're constantly trying to fix it, and it's underfunded, and it's struggling at a time where COVID is another problem on top of it, and it means that other parts to us as human beings and to people living with kidney disease, like physical and emotional well-being, and some of those really important things are seen more as an add-on if there's time, if there's resource. And I think if the pandemic has shown us anything, it's that emotional and physical health is so important. And so I think, my mission is to see exercise, physical activity, emotional well-being ingrained in the pathway for people living with kidney disease. And I guess, you know, being a single person, and there are many people who are obviously doing this, but it's quite a difficult challenge. Whether I will get through this in my lifetime, I'm not sure, but, you know, I will certainly have a good go at setting the path towards it. But I think that's probably my biggest frustration. We have very few renal physiotherapists around the country. I know globally there are very few people who routinely counsel people living with kidney disease about physical health. So yeah, it's a difficult model to break into, I think, and to show worth and equality, I think, between the two.
Yeah, so those time pressures, the frustration of such embedded systemic behaviors, I suppose. And this is where, for me, that understanding of we can only affect change based on how much we're willing to dive into ourselves. And that's really not easy, especially if we're having a lot of mirrors of, no, that actually isn't very important, or who the key decision makers are in those systems. And, you know, there's often this culture of reverence of medics, or do what the doctor says, which is very disempowering in this day and age. It may have been lovely 50 years ago, when there was more of a family physicianship mentality, that you would see the same doctor for long periods of time, but things have changed very much around that. Lena, I'd love if you would speak a little bit more to the research that you're doing at the moment, because you're kind of honing in, and it really resonates with me, having had 2 kidney transplants myself, on kind of looking at and if I get it wrong, you'll correct me, but looking at the kind of the clinical setting of how people navigate their journey, maybe pre and post transplantation, but how are they holistically held in that space?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm doing some research which is focusing on, so let me backtrack a bit. So I was very interested in well-being and lifestyle after people have a transplant, because I felt that there wasn't anything out there for people to support people. And so I thought, well, before going in there and designing something and introducing what I think might be a solution, I thought, well, I need to go back and speak to people about it. So I need to understand their experiences from the ground up. And I also need to understand the experiences of the people, the clinicians, so all sorts of clinicians, nurses, doctors, dietitians, pharmacists, you know, the lot. So I started off with running some focus groups and did some one-to-one interviews. And I really thought it was going to come out with, you know, people saying, yes, we don't have this, we need it desperately. And I thought, well, that's going to be, you know, my future work, and that will be it, and it'll be a nice little pathway. And that wasn't at all what's come out of this. What's come out of it is that there's very little support available for people just to understand even the basics of how to manage this condition, you know, but ranging from all sorts of things, like how to, I don't know, the importance of taking medications, or how to take them, why they're taking them, to understanding about, is diet important? Is exercise important? When should they start it? Is it okay after? There was so much that was the unknown. But what struck me was that people didn't also maybe recognize that these were important features, because the medical team didn't have, or the clinical team didn't have the time to discuss it. So if you're not discussing it, then people think it's not important. And they're not discussing it because they haven't got time. And they're then saying, so then the clinicians are talking about, well, people don't know how to do these things and they need to understand them, but yet there's no system of how do we impart that? How do we support people in managing this condition, to living with this new transplant, to to incorporating it into their lifestyle. There's no strategy, there's no mechanism, there's nothing that's coordinating to support that. So that's then the body of the next piece of work that I hope to do, is how do we unpick that all and start slowly building in that support network throughout the journey that people go on before they have a kidney transplant to when they get the kidney transplant, and that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, so that the clinicians can also see the value of providing that support to people, so that they do understand how to live with this new kidney that they've gained. I'm not sure that was particularly articulate, but it's hopefully captures a little bit about what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it does, Lena, and I can speak to that, because having been in the system for so long, you know, I've been a patient in the NHS for 30 years, and you know, this is something I'll always have to navigate. And I had my first kidney transplant when I was 21, so I had the benefit of youth by my side, even though I'd kind of come off the back of 7 years of hemodialysis at that point. But what I will say, and I hope it's helpful for people to hear it, that, you know, when it comes to nutrition and movement, it's about finding what works for you, which is so unique. Because I had the great gift of growing up in Zambia in Southern Africa. And so this isn't theory for me. This is how I came into the world. So I was very shocked when we moved as a family to, well, first I went to boarding school for a while in Dublin in Ireland, where I got very sick. And had to navigate that as a 10-year-old girl on my own without my parents, because my mother they were in Zambia, and I foolishly, you know, thought that I'm 10, I can handle this, and told my mum not to come. It's fine, I'll be home soon. But that came at a price. You know, I started to have all of these abandonment issues and things like that in my 30s. And luckily, you know, I've been able to have so much openness and healing in my family. So I say that because I know it will resonate with so many. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I've had a kidney adventure. It's quite hard to be bone crushingly honest with ourselves, let alone then with the people that we love and who have witnessed our journey. But I often think that people forget that simple changes can have profound differences. And that especially with the sort of the very confusing messages that could come through the media around, you know, give up gluten, give up sugar, give up everything, and then everything will be fine. That's not, it just creates a lot of fixation and paranoia. And I can't really speak to the dietetic approach so much. And I know, Lena and I had a little chat on this, we touched upon it. But if I think of how I hold space for somebody who comes to see me, and I get that it's not within the NHS, right? I get that, I understand. But what is heartbreaking for me is that there is such a chasm that exists between these two systems, and how on earth do we integrate if people don't know the basics? And I'm going to weave in breath as an example, because breath is a free resource. It's so universal, and yet it's a massive missing piece in medicine. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So if I go, because I do sense and feel very deeply, if I go into a clinical consult and the person is stressed, and this isn't about judgment, this is just, oh, okay, I really need to shore up now. I really need to tap into my inner resources to make sure I'm not going to come out a complete wreck. That if the doctor is, you know, between mouthfuls of fizzy pop and looking at the labs, I'm not saying this always happens by any means. You know, I've had wonderful care as well. So, but I'm the one that is in my body all the time. And to just to use another example, because it was only through talking it through with my sister that I realized that, oh, no wonder I'm stressed out of my mind. I developed from the new kidney, and I say the new kidney, it came from somebody who had lived and then died, and that's not spoken about, the deep spirituality of what it is to have somebody die, and then you have the great gift of somebody who, you know, I've had two men who I've never met and will never, who died and passed on this great gift that is now a part of me at two very different stages in my life. But I thought I was going to lose the kidney a year in, which was absolutely devastating. To have had, I had a great journey with the first transplant. It was nearly 20 years, and I learned a lot through that. But to go through a very successful surgery, to have healed so well, and then this virus to come along, I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn from this? It's come for a reason. And it was really about get out of your way, get out of your way. Stop blocking what you need to share in the world, because you're not going to help people if you keep everything's fine, if you keep pretending, because that's not helpful. And I really emphasize that as well, that how do we hold safe space for people in our own families, let alone in a clinical setting. But the point that I'm getting to is around one of the doctors at the time. I don't have a particularly great dynamic, and that's rare. A lot of the people I really love, they're really lovely people. They're just confined by a system that has got a lot of embedded stuff going on in it. But it was a combination of having, because I had this internal virus, we had to kind of lower down the immunosuppression meds, which you don't really want to be doing that within the first year. It's a very, very important balancing act. And she just said, we need to hold our nerve. And I was telling my sister Aisling this, and she's like, well, she doesn't have to hold her nerve. It's you that's doing that. And it is, I get that. I don't know the impact my situation might have had on that particular doctor. We've known her for a while. We've had our run-ins. So there's already that kind of a little bit of a bristle there. And so I'm not going to be safe to open up. I'm not going to say, look, God, this is, or for just to somebody to say in that situation, whew, tough times. That's all it takes. It's not about, oh God, I don't have time. By the time you said I don't have time, you could have just said, wow, tough times. I'm thinking of you, or whatever, just something. So that's kind of a bit of a long way round, but I'm kind of going to bring it into the breath piece. And I know Charlene and I have spoken about this at quite a length, but I'm just interested, especially with your physiotherapy background, because I was talking to somebody who's not a renal physiotherapist, but who trained in physiotherapy back in the 70s. And she said the first thing they did was breath with people. What's happened along the way? Why have we lost this connection with helping people to breathe?
I guess, it's probably been about prioritizing and not necessarily prioritizing the right things. But, there are different aspects to physiotherapy. And, Lena, I think, said it really well at the beginning, incredible time pressures. To take a moment to breathe. I know it seems like the most simple thing, but you do need safe space. You do need somebody who's in the right place themselves to be able to help conduct that in an effective and safe way. And I think we've probably become stuck on the treadmill in terms of like Lena said as well, treating the illness. Somebody comes to see you with a problem with their back, or comes to see you because they're not able to move as much as they would like to. The immediate thought is, to be able to help with solutions to that, as opposed to stepping back and saying, why has this problem come about? Why are people, what could we do if we step back and have some space? So I think that's probably where, it's not without that the intention isn't there. It's that we're on a treadmill, and we probably need to be able to step back and look at how we just deliver things in a better way, I think, for patients.
Yeah, and I know, and I get this. I know people are kind of in that, I was thinking actually when you were talking, there's a book that I read a while ago, and I can't remember the authors. I'm having a brainstorm, but I think it's called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it's this idea of when we're stuck in the bloody red ocean, we can't even look to the right and see, oh, there's a whole vast blue ocean of possibility there. So completely stuck and embroiled in this hard stress. It's very difficult to affect change when you're stressed. I know that for myself, that's why I have to keep doing the work and keep reframing, keep coming back to myself, that what's the bigger purpose here? What's the mission? Let me get a little bit more specific with both of you, as the women that you are, as the mothers that you are, as the people who, are doing all of this research. And, Charlene, I know you've been involved in a big thing that both you and I are involved in. And, if we want to speak about it, we can. If we don't want to mention it today, that's completely fine too. But I'd like to hone it down to the two of you. Just give a couple of things that you're doing that what moves the needle for you, what helps you to come back to yourself. And the answer might be, I really don't know. I still need to figure that out, and that's fine. But there'll be something, we all have something that lights us up, whether it's, the way our child laughs or slams the door in just such an honest strop. Let's say, give two things each, share. What are you doing to take care of yourself at the moment? And this isn't whimsical, right? This isn't about, oh, I'll say something that I think people want to hear. What helps you at the moment?
Shall I start with this one? So there's a couple of things. I think one of the things has been taking direction from you, Kira, in terms of the breath, and realizing that you can, a little bit like how we started the session, we can actually take a moment and do some breathing that doesn't have to take half an hour. It doesn't have to take going somewhere or doing something, but also that we can include it in things we do. Like I try every day when I walk my dog to not have my phone or have any thoughts in my mind about, and I want to plan, my brain is wanting to plan what's going to happen with the day, but about seeing the colors of the trees, doing some sort of mindful walking with the dog, feeling the breath, those things from that point of view have really helped. And then on the other hand, it's been just cuddling my children, who are both a bit big now. They're sort of 12 and 14, but they would hate me saying it, especially on something like this. But, at night I can still give them both a good cuddle, and that just makes the whole world all right for me.
Yeah, I can feel the mummy cuddles. Lena. Thanks, Charlene.
Probably not enough, to be honest. So I think probably my passion is food. It's cooking, it's eating, it's everything to do with food is actually my passion and my escape route. Obviously my children as well. But I must say that at the moment, what's moving the dial for me, in terms of when I say moving the dial, I think I'm going through a period of a lot of learning, I think, with this, when I said I was on a journey. And I come across these almost like stories that really resonate with me in terms of trying to place where we are in this whole spectrum of integrating care from a medical model to a more person-centered model. And I'm just going to share an example with you that I came across a few weeks ago, where a junior doctor referred somebody to me, and he said, oh, this lady is really, she's really overweight. She's got terribly controlled diabetes. She really doesn't understand anything about what she's doing. I think she just needs a bit of help with her kidneys. Like, okay, fine. So took her in, sat her down, started talking to her about where she was, had a look at her blood results. And it turns out that she's done an astronomical effort to get one of these blood results that shows how your diabetes is controlled. From in 3 months period, she's shifted it so much that I've hardly ever seen it happen like to that degree. It went from being utterly terribly controlled to not well controlled, but in comparison to where it was very, very good. And she had done so many changes which were appropriate, but because nobody had spoken to her and asked her what she had done and had kind of looked beyond what was presented with them at that moment in time in clinic and hadn't looked at the history, the picture was completely different. The picture was of somebody who was trying so hard and so much and had actually done so much for their own healthcare, but that wasn't what was presented at the outset. And I think that to me just illustrates what the value of bringing in the person and talking to the person about what they're doing, how that can change the course of the treatment that you give. So it's kind of these little examples, I think, that are firing my brain at the moment.
Yeah, and that reminder we learned through story. You're talking about HbA1c. Can you give us the readings? Can you remember what they were?
Yeah, so it was going up from about 119 down to 79.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic. And I think it's really important to put that in the mix, because a lot of, if we talk about some of the functions of the kidneys, and let alone the kind of the spiritual filtering that we might be doing with them, or integrating somebody else's tissue and honoring that process, but they regulate blood pressure, they regulate the pH balance in the blood. They are very important for vitamin D metabolism. That is the second stage for converting vitamin D to its active form. It happens in the kidneys. They have a very close relationship with, our energy. If we think about erythropoietin, is sometimes called EPO, that is produced by the kidneys, and so in turn you might get a lot of fatigue, a lot of anemia in people with kidney illness, and maybe some people listening today have kind of got some things with their kidneys, or they know somebody in their life that has. And I'm going to share this anecdote because I'm just off the back of another kind of deep dive somatics and myofascial release training, which is actually part of yin yoga, which is a very deep practice and kind of tapping into what is it to be, in relationship with ourselves. But I kind of started sharing a lot more about what I was doing, integrating a holistic approach to kidneys, which I haven't done in such a big group setting before. There was about 45 people in the online training. And I thought, in one of the breakout groups, because we were asked to say, let's just talk about something that matters to you. And I said, I know this is going to sound a bit weird, and there was only a group of I think there were 5 other people. I said, this is what I'm doing at the moment. I'd love to hear how you feel about your own kidneys, or if you have someone in your life that has a kidney situation going on. Just so, to your point, Lena, that, to hear those stories, and because it's very rich material. And I mean, statistically, there were 2 people that had quite profound stories. One was going to donate a kidney and then had a chat with her doctor friend who told her not to. So, that's that journey. And because, the Living Donor is a huge program and a very successful one as well. It doesn't come without challenge, because, what is it to receive somebody else's organ that is going to be surgically removed? It's a huge process to go through to receive that, and for somebody to offer it as well. And then the other person shared that her uncle, who was this big character, larger than life, but that had, he had an infection, and he only had 1 kidney, and it resulted in the sort of the failure of that remaining kidney. And she said it was, and she is an empath. She's a highly sensitive person. So she picked up on the subtleties, that he went from this big character to somebody that was just so exhausted all the time. And he had to go and have these dialysis treatments. And she said, I understood the emotional impact, or the energetic impact, that it can have. So I just share that. I'm going to come back to you, Lena, because I'm really interested in this research piece, and I'm really also interested in where do you vision it? What's your vision? And dream big, because I think all of my teachers have encouraged me to dream big, and it's, awakening our inner physician, which was what my first book was very much about. What's your vision around the research that you're doing?
My vision is, firstly, because it's the work I've been doing a lot at the moment is qualitative in nature. So that means it's about focus groups and interviews. And this is probably following on from the biomedical model, but that research, or that type of research, probably isn't given as much kudos in the kind of science world, in that it's thought to be quite subjective. It's not fact ridden. It's a little bit more probably not valued as highly, and maybe that is changing. So I would really just love to bring that value because that's where the stories come from, that's where the experiences lie, and where you can capture them to inform how you can change systems. And so I would really love to bring, first of all, the value of qualitative research up within the renal world, to bring it on par with the quantitative research that is done. On another level, in terms of what's going to fall out from this research, I really would love to change the journey that people go through right from before they have a transplant. So, for example, when they're on dialysis, and that, and this isn't the right word, but it's the word that we use at the moment, is this self-care, you know. So a lot of times in the clinicians think, you know, if you give somebody a leaflet, you job done, you know, tick that box, you know, that person should just be able to absorb all the information that's in that leaflet way and be able to implement it. So I think my goal really is to change that, so that information now is not just simply a process of just delivery, but it's a process of allowing people to somehow embody that knowledge and facilitating that process, and having that start from a very early point, and having all those touch points along the way when people need it, depending on what emotions that they're feeling, that information is tailored to that point in their clinical journey. And I think at the end of it, you will come out with a situation which will be much more satisfactory for people with the condition, as well as being much more satisfactory for the clinicians as well. So it's almost bringing the two closer together, where we value more the experience, but that the patients understand as well what is needed from their point of view, from the medical side, what they need to take on and what the doctors and nurses will take on. So this should be more synergy between the two. And I think that's my bigger vision for it.
Holding that vision with you, and I know we all are here, because that's collaboration, and what Jim speaks so passionately about: radical collaboration, synergy, collaboration, partnership, you know, parity. We have to have a balance in the research pieces that are influencing future models. And yeah, what I will say also is having done a little bit of work with some fourth year medical students in Cardiff last year, that it was a fortuitous sequence of events that brought us together, but it was again all women, but they're yearning for this information. And so I just did some breath sessions, and you know, to just give them a pat on the back that they've set up this holistic health society as medical students. So they want it, that, you know, they're hungry for it. They're looking at a medical model that doesn't serve. And so Charlene, let me ask you this, because I know that you have so many hats that you wear, such many leadership roles. So you are a very known person in the world of renal health here in the UK. And you mentor people, you know, you mentor people. If I think of Jules and Ellen and their journey, what's your vision for the younger generations? Because a lot of what one of my teachers would say, Don Oscar Miro Quesada, is a proven curandero. The work we do now is about the next 7 generations. What would you say to that, Charlene, around your vision for planting these seeds for future generations, and you know, what legacy do we want to leave?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's really about empowering the next generation. It's about ensuring that there is an even playing field. So I talk very much from, I'm an allied health professional, so I come from a non-medical background, although I have my PhD qualification now, and that in some way, and by becoming a consultant physio, has leveled the playing field to a certain extent. But I think, you know, the legacy that I would like to leave behind is an equal playing field for other allied health professionals, other nurses, midwives, who are doing some really important research to feel empowered to continue and to lead in that. And I think, you know, one of the things I'm really passionate about is that when we mentor people, that we are allowing them to lead, maybe sort of under our wing, so that, you know, we are able to take joy in the fact that they are the next leaders. And I think that's something that doesn't always happen. And I have to sometimes step back from wanting to jump in and do something and think, this is an opportunity for somebody else within my team or within the consortium which I'm leading, to do this and to find my joy in their achievements. So that's really, really important for me. And I think, I can use Jules and Ellen as examples of people who, have come through my team with, no research experience and, have now, Ellen's just finished her PhD in a very similar field to what Lena's been talking about. So developing an online resource for people who've had a kidney transplant and, looking at behavioural support and emotional well-being as well as physical activity. And, I'm really proud of them. Jules is starting off on her PhD career. So for me, that's really important that we empower the next generation to lead and to carry on in our footsteps.
Yeah. And nurturing. It sounds how you share is just very nurturing and supportive. And it is. It's and I wonder if women are better at doing this, to celebrate people's successes rather than, be disdainful or disparaging of them, because it's, we have to speak honestly here, being a woman and a non-medic, and I am those things as well, that I suppose if I use my examples of increasingly being asked to, I've done many years of peer supporting, being asked to speak on various panels and at sometimes international conferences. It's always, come in as a patient, and it's very frustrating to not be seen as you are, that I am both, and I have something of tremendous value that has been hard-won wisdom, and I don't say that lightly. It doesn't mean my journey is of greater value than anyone else's, but that I'm able to corral pearls from within, that I know Charlene likes this, and actually I say it in my community class as well, and it really resonates for people to please place a moon drop on someone's tongue, to pull a pearl from Grandmother Moon, and I see you, here's a pearl drop, and to do that more often for each other. It just feels so incredibly important. I'd love to read something actually, because it's a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's by an author, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I haven't fully read it yet. I said I opened the book and that's what I'm going to share from. And it of course was a resonant passage. But, her weaving, this Braiding Sweetgrass, what a beautiful title. Her weaving of two different worlds, and what can be done with that. And the book was recommended to me by two people who I very much respect independently. So I thought I have to get this book, and maybe you will too. So yeah, just drink this in. There was a time when I teetered precariously with an awkward foot in each of two worlds, the scientific and the indigenous. But then I learned to fly, or at least try. It was the bees that showed me how to move between different flowers, to drink the nectar and gather pollen from both. It is this dance of cross-pollination that can produce a new species of knowledge, a new way of being in the world. After all, there aren't two worlds. There is just this one good green earth. So how does that make you feel? I know we're kind of going into the feels and we might not be comfortable with that, but how does that make you feel, that if someone has just planted a moon drop upon your tongue and read you a beautiful piece of material, and maybe it's just one or two words that you share, that you just land somewhere in your body, and to just say, this is how I feel.
I think that was beautiful. It just completely encompasses where I feel we're at in terms of the environment we work in at the moment, and that you come in and that you're part of as well, Kira. So it just really resonated with that in terms of bringing the both together, and it really resonated with me in terms of the journey that I'm on at the moment. So yeah, really thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Lena.
And I think for me as well, completely agree with Lena, but also just opportunity. And, you know, we are here now, and there is, you know, this is our one opportunity. This is our chance. This is our world. And we have a great opportunity to try and change the way we deliver healthcare, well-being, support for people living with kidney disease. And I think together, if we pull together and we keep it as high up on the agenda as we can do, we can start getting that process there. We might not finish it in our careers, but, you know, we can be part of that journey. And I think that's where that resonated with me.
Yeah, we're all in the braid together, in the rich weave, and you know, pulling down those golden strands, that we all have something to offer, and it's not the same, and that's the value of coming together in spaces like this. And I really honor the courage of both of you for doing this, because I know it was kind of a bit of a but I also celebrate my capacity to bring amazing people together, which, after all, Jim, you know, is the guy who said, yeah, I see you, why don't you do this? That, you know, I really thank you for being brave. And I have kind of, in the lead up to this, and Charlene knows, I've been listening to quite a lot of Brené Brown. So, you know, in between, like, crying today, like, oh my gosh, this is such a big moment for me. And then thinking, no, I kind of need to just calm down and not over prepare, that I didn't even want to give myself an unfair advantage, because I know you may have been thinking, oh, how's this going to go, you know? And that feels really, really, really amazing, because Brené's research and her work speaks so much about the anatomy of trust, and that trust is built in the small moments, and that if we build up that bank of trust, and that we ask someone from that place, that they say yes. Yeah. And I've seen time and time again people who, you know, you might think, oh, but they're a surgeon and they're really busy, that you connect through relationship, through relating, which is no easy thing. It's probably the most complex thing we do in this world, is relating to ourselves and then to other. People say yes when they see that you're just asking from a place of, can you help me out here? Or how about this? What do you think about this? To do it in just a very simple way. What might you, because I'm mindful that, you know, I'm not a mother, I don't have that, my sister is, and I know the extra challenges that it comes at, you know, especially when you're making your way in the world, and wanting to pioneer and move through, sometimes where in spaces that feel very sludgy or difficult, or, oh gosh, not this again. But as mothers, and I know this will resonate with many because everyone has a mother, but what would you, and I'm going to flip it this way, what would you say to your younger self, and maybe picture yourself as the age of one of your children now? What would you say to her? Like, you're parenting her now.
I think I would probably really just say about living in the moment and appreciating where you are in every moment of time. Because I think I can look back on vast periods of my life which have passed me by in a flux of planning and reminiscing about what could have been or is going to be. So I think that has really been something in the last few years, and you know, getting to know you better, Kira, as well, and the influence you've had on me in terms of just enjoying, stepping back and enjoying the moment that we're in, and being grateful for it, and appreciative of being where we are.
Yay, I love that. Your baby Charlene is jumping up and down in joy. Lena, what would you say to your young sweet self?
So I think I would say to really trust yourself, hold yourself strong, and be powerful in yourself, and not let others undermine you, I think, and just really be confident in the person that you are. I think would be my my strong points that I would hopefully that they'll end up with.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe, you know, I'm asking you both to be vulnerable. Let me share something. Let me think. I mean, I kind of picture my 4-year-old self, who I don't really remember much about the diagnosis. I think it probably would have had an impact on my mother way more than me at the time. And the brave decision that my parents took to move to Zambia, which I only found out way into my adulthood, they did that to help me thrive, which moves me very deeply. But I would say, look what we did. That's what I'd say to her. And that all the possibilities that we have, we just have to dream them into being. And that I love what you've both shared, because it's that living in the moment and to trust yourself. All things are possible at all times. And we forget. This journey of life is remembering and forgetting. We forget all the time. I know I do. It's like, oh, I forgot. Oh no, I'm being my own pain in my neck. I actually get a pain in my neck when I'm stressed. It's the body. You know, the body speaks. The body is expression of subconscious mind. That's the embodiment. And I love, Lena, that you use the word embodiment in some of your sharings, because what is it to embody ourselves? What is it to feel into the rivers and streams that run inside of us? Because it's so profound. You know, there's such beauty in our rawness, in our vulnerability. And, you know, society doesn't necessarily celebrate vulnerability at all. And so I really honor and thank you for that. Are there any last things or things that you feel want to be shared or spun out, or anything else? And it could be something really practical about kidney health. You know, we need a healthy cardiovascular system to get things working well, and to have good, healthy blood sugar management and healthy insulin sensitivity. It can be something really practical, because, you know, it's from the practical to the magic and weaving all of those things together. Is there anything that you would like to share? And please, no obligation, you don't have to, but if there's something that you feel you'd like to end on.
I feel like there's been a couple of things in the chat here about Kidney Beam, and I feel I'm not doing it justice not to mention Kidney Beam, and the fact that we are extending out the membership over the next 6 months for people to come along. Here is one of our main wonderful people that shares so much of herself and her experience of living with kidney disease, but also all of her experience of working with people to help with breath and yoga. And so it's a wonderful resource that's out there, and we are going to continue it on. I wanted to just spin round. My last thing was really just to thank you, Kira, because I think you are such a driving force. You're like the good angel that sits on my shoulder to make sure that I don't lose sight of what's really important in the treadmill of life and the treadmill of, you know, trying to move forwards with so many other aspects of kidney care that I'm also responsible for. So yeah, just very appreciative for you. So thank you.
Thank you. And yes, you know, shout out to Kidney Beam, beam it out. It's a free online wellbeing resource that was dreamt up by Charlene. And I know there were others involved, but please take that credit, Charlene, because you were the ideas pioneer behind that. And I'm very thrilled to have been part of the original steering group and setting it all up. And yeah, to help people help themselves. You know, just because you have a kidney condition doesn't mean that you'll have had this anywhere near the same experience as me. It's very nuanced. It's very nuanced. And I appreciate you deeply, Charlene, as well. So thank you. Lena, do you have anything?
I'm not going to go into the in-depth, you know, ins and outs of diet and the value of diet, which I believe in passionately. But I was just noticing in the chat about things like about the community and how important community is, and the support that we can all get from one another, you know. So that is probably something I really want to try and change within the system of kidney disease, is that support, to really acknowledge how much support people can get from each other and what value that does bring is so important. So yeah, I just wanted to say I really acknowledge that, and to say thank you, Kira, as well.
Oh, thank you, Lena. I'm really excited to hear where your journey takes you, and please know that I'm walking with you on that path, and I'm always here in whatever capacity you need me to be. But yeah, I'm mindful that there's probably quite a lot going on in the chat. Yeah, and what page did it fly open for braiding sweetgrass? It was page 47. That was the magic page number, page 47. Yeah, I don't know, do we want to, because Lena, I'm mindful that you've been so generous with your time. It's 5:10 UK time here. But do we want to close it off or continue with the after chat? Jim or Rick, I'll be guided by you.
First of all, thank you, Kiera and Lena and Charlene. This has been so heartful and so endearing in the most fundamental sense of that term, as just to listen to you dialogue between yourselves about something that's so excruciating, but you've done it in such a beautiful way. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I suggest I'd like to ask a question or two drawn from the chats, and then you can have sort of final comments in the next 10, 15 minutes or so. And the first thing I just wanted to note is that, you know, the struggle that you all are going through with kidneys in a medical system based on scientific reductionism and an empirically based worldview that limits them to what they can measure and calculate is the same struggle that I think people are engaging in almost all over the world. You think of physics and the strictures of contemporary physics in relationship to what physics is also discovering. And everywhere you look, there's a dialectic between an old worldview that is entrenched, ferociously defensive, and yet less and less relevant because it can't accommodate all the facts that are now coming into play. And the three of you have that wider worldview, but you, Lena and Charlene, are in these structures that are limited. And then someone like Kiara is both in the structure but outside the structure, and there's this disconnect. And I think almost everyone I know is in the same situation, particularly people with chronic diseases, you know, where they really want to approach it holistically, and they go to their local National Health Service, however it's called in country after country, and they get the same limitation, which they know isn't true. And then when you tie that into big pharma and a whole pharmaceutical approach to health and well-being, which really doesn't solve the problem, but helps you kind of manage it, you get chaos in people's lives because you don't know what to believe. You don't know really who to turn to. And you're forced, you know, I can't remember another time in history where the patient now needs to be in charge of their own health pathway. Because it always was, well, it's the doctor knows. But we're now in a situation where, in fact, the doctor doesn't know. And oftentimes the patient knows more than the doctor. And so I just wanted to indicate that this conversation was a microcosm of many other domains in the culture, and not only in science and medicine, but in politics, in economics, you know, in education. So, you know, blessings upon you as you move forward. The question that I would like to, I know we don't have much time, but I'd like to go back to the kidney. And because we've been talking about your experience, but I think just for the people that are listening, I'd love to hear you just talk about the importance of the kidney in the body system. Just so people have a sense, Chiara, of what you went through, that when something like the kidney starts to give out, that's like a major development in your body equilibrium. So I don't know which one of you is the most familiar with the kidney. And then the other side of that question is within the context of integral health. Are there particular techniques? Are there particular nutritional techniques that you would just offer for people that have kidney? Because I know in my discussions with people involved in integral medicine, acupuncture is good for certain things, as opposed to homeopathy is better for certain things. And sometimes you need surgery for other things. So part of the sort of, I would say, the genius of integral medicine is the discovery that different aspects of our inherited traditions of healing work better on different organs and different ailments than others. So speak first about just the importance of the kidney, and then what techniques. I know you mentioned breathing, Chiara, that sort of works for everything, but what would be kidney specific? Would just love to hear the three of you comment on these two questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to kick that off. I mean, what I would say is kidney specific. Firstly, interestingly, they're the only organs of the back body, which kind of gives them a slightly different energetic imprint, if you like.
Say again, the kidney is the only organ in the
only
back of the
organs
body?
of the back body. So everything else, if we think of the thoracic and the abdominal spaces,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's quite an interesting energy. So if we bring in traditional Chinese medicine, and I'm not an expert on that by any means, but I find it interesting. We learn quite a lot about the Taoist approach in Yin Yoga, and they often can have that sense of will, But I have come, the more I've kind of felt into it, is that in the English language anyway, kidneys, I've started making typos around this, kidneys and kindness are quite, there's quite an interplay in that. And I'm being a little bit, I'm kind of braiding sweetgrass here a little bit with the language, but that, when we're kind to ourselves, if we think blood pressure issues, unmanaged hypertension is a leading cause of kidney failure, as is diabetes. So those, when it comes to lifestyle, and this is the risk we run if we don't start addressing some key public health issues, that the amount of people going into kidney failure will increase. And that's not sustainable. It's very expensive. Dialysis is very expensive. Transplantation is very expensive. It's highly specialized. And to kind of put the good things in. So, I'll bring in, well, interestingly, the Danes in Denmark, they banned trans fats many years ago, and we still have them in our food chain. So anything that has kind of hydrogenated fats on the ingredients is best avoided, because the kidneys, along with the brain, are some of the fattiest organs in the body. So they need good fats. If you put kind of disruptive fats in.
And what's an example of good fats and disruptive fats?
Sure. Okay, so the hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, I know in America there's a lot of high fructose corn syrup that kind of goes into the food chain. So that would be an example. And then good fats, I actually brought it in to sit with me. Omega 3s. So these are called essential fatty acids, and they're called essential for a reason. We have to get them externally. We don't make them inside. There are other things that we can make inside. The gut is incredible. But these omega 3s, and you could supplement, again, take necessary advice. If you're on blood thinners, these aren't a good idea, but generally they don't have any other contraindications. Oily fish, avocado, nuts and seeds, you're going to be getting your omega fats through that. And you know, the brain needs healthy food, because that's the coordination with a healthy stress response. So if we're kind of living really punishing schedules, the kidneys will suffer. So if we think anatomically of the adrenal glands sit on top, on top of kidneys. If we're kind of spitting out too much cortisol and adrenaline and marinating in a soup of stress hormones, that's very punishing for the kidneys. And then blood pressure, you know, the blood pressure is more likely to be high. And then if we're kind of reaching for, oh, well, you know, I'll anesthetize with wine. And this isn't to judge, you know, I have a glass of wine, really enjoy it, but it's addiction, we know, is rife in our society. So those are things, you know, good fats, and limit the refined sugars. And before I hand it over to Lena and Charlene, which I really want to hear what they're going to say, but I had, what I realized now as a child in South Africa, the doctor that I had, Professor Thompson, he had all the renal physician credentials, but he was very naturopathic in his approach. And he got me drawing glasses of water every day, like every time you have a glass of water, draw it. So it's like, it made it interactive and fun, which was very helpful as a child. But he was very clear with me and my mum, don't eat refined sugars. Now, do I have a piece of cake? Yes, I do. Do I love baking? Yes, I do. You know, it's a kind of 80-20 rule, but we have such a sugar obsessed society, and this is very damaging, because that's what then spirals into diabetes, dysbiosis in the gut, which then has all of the spiraling impacts into the, you know, we're highly sensitive creatures. So I know I've kind of gone off on some tangents there.
No, this is what I wanted to kind of tease out, so people have a sense of detail and granularity if they have these kinds of issues. I love that you brought it up, Jim. Yeah. So yeah, what would hand it over to Lena and Charlene.
I think I'll go next, only because I really have to go after this.
Yes.
So apologies. So a lot of what Kira said, from my perspective, again, I don't have a naturopathic background, but I really do believe in cooking from scratch, you know, and limiting the processed foods. It's just really good for overall health. And I know that's not always possible for a lot of people, because those processed foods tend to be a lot cheaper, and it is really, really hard nowadays to always get the fresh ingredients that you want. And also the culture of not understanding how to cook food. Lots of people aren't taught from when they were young through their parents, or in schools, you're not taught to cook. So there's some real public health issues around eating healthily that make it a real challenge. But that's what I would say is healthy eating. When we get into the specifics, which I won't get into now, that when you've been diagnosed and what is the best thing to have at what stage is so individual. So I will leave that. But in terms of the public health message of cooking from fresh vegetables, you know, wholemeal seeds, you know, that kind of the fiber, that's all the best really that you can do. And with that, I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to leave because I have to pick up a little girl who is
Thank you so much, Lena. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this.
Thank you, Lena, so much. So grateful. Be in touch.
Fine. Pleasure.
I mean, just before turning over to Charlene, you know, this issue of nutrition is so classic, because hospitals are notorious for their bad, non-nutritious food. And here you have an assertion that nutrition is critical, and that's completely, or for the most part, almost completely absent in any kind of conventional medical regime. So that's just a little example of the dialectic that Kiara and Charlene and Lena are addressing as they try to bring an integral approach in a system that doesn't honor even the suggestions that they're making. So Charlene, what would you say?
So, you know, I can come quite nicely on from what Lena was saying around nutrition and talk to moving more. And I think as a society, we just don't move enough. And there are some huge benefits to being properly physically active. So that's, being not sedentary, so sitting less and moving more, but actually also the benefits of taking exercise, exercise to the point where we are warm and slightly sweaty. So our hearts are pumping and we are getting all of those wonderful benefits in terms of endorphin release, feeling better emotionally wise, but also the benefits that we know happen in terms of our vascular health. And, one of the research projects I'm looking at is whether if we exercise more, we can actually slow down the progression towards end-stage kidney failure, because we can be protective of our vascular health, including the small vessels which are in our kidneys. So I would say that, as part of an integral approach in terms of looking after our emotional well-being, looking after our nutrition, just moving more and doing it in any way which can be part of routine and can be sustained. And this is why it has to be very individual. We can see from research projects that we've done where we've tried to prescribe one type of activity for a whole group of people, it doesn't work. So we need to be working on an individual basis with what people enjoy doing and how they can increase their activity. But that's my passion, and that's where I come in.
Yeah, I mean, nutrition and exercise, are tonics that serve anybody anywhere for any reason, really. We need to be moving more, and we need to be treating our bodies as if they're the temple of the Holy Ghost, as St. Paul puts it in the scriptures. So thank you for that, Charlene. Thanks so much. So Chiara, a final word from you?
Oh, I would just say, thank you, Jim, for just letting this be a possibility, and that, to see that when a sacred slipstream opens, that there's so many that can kind of benefit from that. And to that, the holistic approach it's not just one thing, it's all the variables, and that your needs change. So, if you're going through a period, just as we're coming into winter here, sometimes we need to hibernate and have the fallow period to just rest. What I've come to learn in my journey is just the huge importance of recalibrating our nervous system. Anything that helps us do that, whether it be our nutrition, our movement, our breath, our support network. I feel so sad for people that don't have any support network. I can't even imagine how difficult that must be. And that there's a lot of work to do, and that the problems are many, but so too are the solutions. We have way more solutions than we know. And so, thank you to Lena and Charlene for making this a discussion, because if I just did it on my own, it wouldn't have been as valuable and as diverse. And to just remind us to, if you've got an idea, just follow it. Don't worry about the outcome, or don't worry about being judged around it. Just give it a go, because at the end of the day, we're all making it up as we go along. We really are.
We are indeed. Well, Chiara, once again, as I said at the beginning, you're a heroine of our time, to be able to absorb this level of challenge and manifest such an elegant beauty of soul. So I I want to just acknowledge your journey, and acknowledge the way you've embodied the truths that you have recognized for your own healing. And it's been an honor having you with us today. And Charlene, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. We're all in these different trenches. We're all on the front line somewhere. and this is what makes humanity rise, is just all of us are just doing our thing. As a friend of mine, Andrew Harvey, says, what is it that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning? That's what you're supposed to do with your life. And when you find that, as you have indicated today, it makes your life ultimately meaningful. So I just want to thank you and salute you, And welcome all of you now to our after chat session. Stanley's just put the link in the chat box. So you're welcome to join us by just clicking that link. And then we'll see you tomorrow on Humanity Rising for a 3-day program on intentional change that's being choreographed by several people in our chat action group and others in the Peace Lab and so forth. So it'll be a very exciting 3-day program on how we understand and engage in intentional change. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the after chat. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same station here on Humanity Rising. Bye for now. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you. I'm so
Thanks
grateful.
So
I'll hop into the after chat for a little bit. I've got a class at 6, but I'll be there for a bit.
Beautiful, beautiful.